Welcome to About the Winelands. In this show, we'll be chatting to leaders, influencers, wine producers, restaurants, wineries businesses, and other role players. Tune in every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday for our latest episodes. You will find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram TV, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Morning, everyone, and welcome back to About the Winelands. Today I'm talking to Vincent and Fiona Buhrer from Saxenburg. Hi, Vincent. Hi, Fiona. Welcome to About the Winelands.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Good morning, Will. Yeah, pleasure to be on, and good morning to all the listeners.
Yes, I think the listeners are going to really enjoy the show, and you guys have such an interesting story. So tell me, can you guys give us a bit of background of how you became involved in the wine industry?
Absolutely. So I'll start off. I think it was never really for me in the beginning in the plan to go into the wine industry. And my father very much had the philosophy, you have to do what you enjoy and what you love. So he never pushed any of us into going into the wine industry. And I had been working on another project in South Africa, and I was living on Saxenburg and loved it so much being back on the farm because I had been studying abroad, that I asked if I could join the Saxenburg team. And I thought in the beginning I'd just do a 6-month stint. And I joined as I got the position of the Cape Town sales representative position. And 6 months went by in a flash. And I noticed that that's a drop on a hot stone, and that you can't really achieve that much in 6 months. And I just have a huge passion and love for Saxenburg. So I decided to, of course, stay on, and I stayed on in that position, and then grew from that position and took over the Johannesburg market and did the sales there. And then I did the national sales and just grew from that position. And you know, before I knew it, 10 years went by in a flash, and I'm still with Saxenburg and now running the estate with my brother. So that's how I got into the wine industry and starting working for Saxenburg, which I'd been in a whole different industry beforehand.
Oh, interesting. And you, Vincent?
So yeah, well, on my side, it was to some extent obviously similar. I mean, we had the great fortune of growing up on this farm, so obviously there was always a real connection and to the place. And I think when you're that close to any industry, you end up loving or loathing it. And you know, both Fiona and myself, it was the case of falling deeply in love with it. And so after university, also I had actually chosen a different path. I ended up in finance, and then within a few years realized that there was a real sort of strong pull to go back to South Africa. So at that time I was based in London, and get involved as well. And you know, for us it was very much about learning about all the facets of the business, to really get a deep understanding, because it is a fairly competitive certainly industry, and it's also one that's been undergoing tremendous change over the last 10-20 years, if you will, with the inclusion of technology and globalization as well. And that all of a sudden the supply chains had changed a lot. And so my early sort of contribution was also in the sales side, but I was going much more on the international markets. In those days, 15 years ago, we started pushing quite heavily towards Asia. And so I was spending a lot of time in Southeast Asia and also East Asia, and building up those markets with the team we had there. And then about 6 years ago, I found my way back to Cape Town, and I moved onto the farm and started getting involved on the managerial side. And to fast forward to today, obviously Fiona and I run the farm together.
Amazing. So your family, can you tell us a little bit of how your family got involved in Saxenburg, and maybe also a little bit of history of the farm itself is always, that's always interesting to our listeners.
So the farm itself dates back to 1963. So it is actually one of the oldest estates in South Africa. And the name also Saxenburg exists already since 1707, because the first owner was von Sachs, and then it went on to the Buhrer brothers, and they kind of combined their names, and that's why it's called Saxenburg. And also the first wines were planted there in 1707 already. And it was always used for wine or mining. Actually, Saxenburg has a lot of, had a lot of silver and granite, of course, and zinc. And so it always went between the two over its history and its course. Then my family purchased the estate in 1989. My father always had our family has been in the wine for 5 generations already. And my father traveled extensively through South Africa with his brother, who actually was studying at UCT back in the days. And he had a huge passion and love for South Africa and the land. And he just saw an opportunity because, you know, South Africa was closed off, and he's always wanted to have a wine estate, and he saw an opportunity in South Africa at the time for him like no other country, where the terroir was exceptional, but it wasn't opened up internationally yet, and he knew he could be part of a change. And so he traveled there in 1988, and he looked at a few wine estates, and he didn't actually find any. And then on his way to the airport, he stopped on Saxenburg, and he said when he entered it, it was like entering home, and he immediately knew that was the farm. And once the terroir analysis was done, it was a perfect match. And so my parents purchased the wine estate in 1989, and then we're actually one of 5 children. So it's Vincent, and then I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters. And my parents moved us over all in 1991 and committed 100% to Saxenburg. And I think the 90s was very much focused onto replanting, because actually when Saxenburg was taken over, it was in a very derelict estate, and it was, we would say, a lump of coal, which we then tried to turn into a lump of gold. And it was actually planted mostly with Chenin, Riesling, and Cinsault at the time. And I would say 90% of that was pulled out and replanted, and the estate was. The estate itself is 200 hectares, and nearly 100 hectares were planted. And they didn't follow trends at the time at all, but they went with what their terroir has to offer. And they set their own trends in the time, especially in the 90s. I would say they were trendsetters, that they then planted Shiraz, which was very uncommon in the early 90s. But, you know, Saxenburg is the ideal location for Shiraz. The whole top of Saxenburg is a decomposed granite field. And so that actually became our main varietal. And then our first winemaker back in the day, in the 90s, was Van Rensburg. And then they got Nico van der Merwe on board. And then he was out throughout the whole 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. And, you know, then in 93, Saxenburg won, I think, 5 double golds in the Veritas and a General Smuck Award. So it catapulted Saxenburg, I would say, on the map. And so that was in the 90s. It was all about, you know, making a reputation and replanting and building the brand Saxenburg. And in the 2000s, we very much concentrated when the market was open on growing internationally. So I would say that's a very short history of Saxenburg.
Oh, that's amazing. I want to ask you, you are a brother and sister team, and I said, the question I wanted to ask is, how do you share management responsibility? But I think that's my nice way of asking you guys, how don't you kill each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's, look, there's certainly the wonderful thing about the family businesses is that, you know, the saying always goes is, you know, you get upset at a friend, it's very hard to get to forgive them. You can be upset with family. We've been having adult fights for 30 plus years, you know, and we're still here to tell the tale. So, you know, family just has the sort of bond that obviously is very advantageous, but comes with its sets of challenges. And I think we trust each other very much. I think we complement each other also in the sense that we share, we share all of the decision making, and certainly the essential one. And it's good to have each other as a sounding board in that sort of sense. But at the same time, in terms of roles, they're really sort of clear cut and defined roles that everyone operates within. And, Fiona being the first to actually go back to the farm, has cut herself a very strong role in the sales side of things and the marketing and the branding of the estate. and has really built that up for herself. Whereas myself, I spent most of my time on the farm, and I got sort of involved in all aspects from the land, so viticulture, into the winemaking as well. As much as I'm not at all a winemaker, we have an excellent winemaker on the farm, but to get more involved in that sort of process, and then the all-encompassing management part of it. In terms of vision and strategy, we take the decisions together and then execute, obviously, in those departments respectively.
That sounds fantastic. You touched a little bit
do
on.
want to say we have the advantage that we actually get along really well. so it's actually nice to work together with somebody that you get along with so well and that you're actually friends with.
Also, I think the issue you mentioned about trust, I think that trust that you have within a family is, that's something that you can't really find anywhere else. So that's great. You touched a little bit on the Shiraz, and this is what Saxenburg is famous for. I think it's Graham Beck that said you guys make the best Shiraz in the country, or maybe I think you could have even said in the world. So tell us a little bit about the other wines you are making, and also your winemaking philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important. Look, the wine industry is one in which you always take a very long-term view, and you need incredible patience for, obviously, because you're dealing with nature, and so by default you're never too sure what hand you're going to be dealt for any specific harvest or during a growing season. But you can certainly work very well around the sort of the aspects that you can control of that, and most of those take place in the vineyard. So I think our first philosophy in winemaking is that 80% of any good wine is made in the vineyard, and with that we take a very sort of rigorous approach to the vineyard and the way that we respect that terroir. We're lucky now that in some ways we have 30 plus years of experience of knowing the land, understanding the specific sites, knowing how certain clones react in specific sites, and we've managed to play with that and adapt to it and enhance it. So that would definitely be the first step of how we look at the philosophy itself. And then obviously it's being close to the market. When I say long-term, we have a vision, or our parents rather had a vision in the late 80s, early 90s, that Syrah was particularly well suited for that. And so, today it represents 60+% of our total production. And we are building on that every year as we learn, obviously, as well. And so it's never been about chasing trends. It's being really sort of firm in the belief that what we're doing is the right thing, that we can improve on that all the time. But that's the kind of discipline and long-term thinking that it takes, and that we enjoy doing, and then some years, the varietal will be a bit more unpopular in some countries, and other years it will be there. But, we certainly would like to think that is something that we can do very well. In terms of the other varietals, we've got incredible diversity on the farm itself. So the farm is about 200 hectares, of which 70 are planted to vines. And we're adding to that every sort of 2 to 3 years. The varietal breakdown is very much in terms of what is suited there. So we have Saxenburg sits, for those that don't know it, Saxenburg sits on one of those old sort of hills outside of Stellenbosch, and it gives us a 360 degree sort of geographic aspect, if you will. Some of it is facing the Stellenbosch Winelands, and some of it is facing Table Mountain and the cooler False Bay slopes. So according to that, we plant in obviously the soils we have as well. And there's again a great diversity of soils, from sort of heavy clay to decomposed granite to heavier sort of gravel soils and Table Mountain sandstone. But basically what we've done is we've allocated the varietals. On the red side, we've got Syrah, obviously Shiraz, which leads the pack. We've got Cabernet Sauvignon, which for us is very representative of Stellenbosch. We've got some Pinotage as well, which to us is kind of the celebration of, a typical South African varietal. And then for our entry-level blend, we've also got some Malbec and some Cabernet Franc. And then we've got a very small portion of Pinot Noir on Champagne Clone, which we use for our Méthode Cap Classique. And on the white side, I mentioned earlier the exposure to False Bay. We've got higher elevation, so 200 plus meter above sea level. We plant Sauvignon Blanc, and that makes up the biggest portion of the white wine. And we've also got some Chardonnay, some Chenin Blanc, and also some Semillon, which we have in smaller quantities.
To add into that philosophy, I think what we were saying is that from our winemaking philosophy, but also for our daily philosophy with Saxenburg, is always to work with respect, and respect that comes to all aspects, you know, respect to our work, to the terroir, to the wine, to the people around us, to our team, and then passion that we need, you know, for the wine itself. Passion comes with everything for us, and then of course always relevance, and that's to stay relevant with our product, relevant in our message, etc. And for us, also the number one thing that we work is in our philosophy for wine is that terroir is everything, and we should that we need to work with our terroir and respect that. So I think those are the three words that are the most important for us in our philosophy.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you arrive at Saxenburg, it feels like you're going on safari. So can you share a bit more about the wildlife on the estate?
Yes, absolutely. So let me give you a little bit of a backstory to why that is there. So back in the day, that was actually also planted with vine, but that's 40 hectares when you go into the bottom of Saxenburg, and it's actually quite a sandy soil. So as you know, we're out for only quality wines, and we could not produce a quality wine on that kind of terroir. So we decided that we would do a safari park there, and also just because we have a huge love for animals. And I think also, you know, a lot of people come to the Cape dressed in their safari gear, and they're wondering where all the wild animals are. And turns out they're not running around here freely. So for us, it's also a wonderful opportunity to have some of that, those wild animals. And we have mainly, of course, zebra, which are reproducing happily on the farm, let's put it like that. And then we have springboks and wildebeest and a few others that are roaming around there. And we just said, you know, let's have something African, let's have something we all love and can nurture there, and use that terroir for the wildlife. So that's why we have that feeling when you come in and all those animals there.
Oh, that's very, very nice. So tell me, what else can visitors experience when they come to Saxenburg?
So we started commercializing the farm. Obviously, the concept of the typical, or many of the South African farms, I should rather say, is very much about having a tourist attractive sort of activities and on the farm, and which are almost their own little profit centers. So we have a tasting room on the farm that you can visit 7 days a week, and which we completely refurbished actually just over 2 years ago. And then on the farm also we have a number of guest cottages, which we also renovated at the same time around the end of 2017, which are two doubles with all ensuite sort of bathrooms, and then there's a bigger cottage which has 3 ensuite bedroom bathroom also available. They're completely self-catering, so they all come equipped with kitchens, and the smaller ones with more of a kitchenette. And then you have access obviously to the outdoors. You're within sort of a couple of 100 meters from the game park itself. You can organize sundowner drinks out on our in the lovely sort of on a platform within that little game park, and enjoy the wines there. You can there's access to a pool, and obviously there's also a braai facility. So that's another aspect of it. And then on the farm itself, we don't at this point, sometimes when we have bigger groups, we have an outdoor Lapa area where we'll organize, especially more for the sort of overseas visitors, we'll organize typical sort of snook braais or meat braais as well, and then take them through our wines in that sort of way. Obviously, these are things that have been badly affected now by the lockdown and obviously the continuing sort of regulations. But typically these are very active participants of the farm.
Oh, amazing. You mentioned the coronavirus and the lockdown, and it's basically forced all of us to rethink our business models. So Fiona mentioned that you guys have spent the time working. Do you have any changes or new ideas in mind?
So as I said, I think we took this lockdown as a real time to sit down and put our minds together and really use this time effectively. I think we've done the opposite of saying let's lock ourselves down as well. We've literally said, what can we do with this time? And I think the main thing we've been focusing on is building a relationship with our end customers. So we always had you have a strong relationship with your partners abroad, with the restaurants, with your liquor stores, and that we've been very much concentrating on. But we wanted to, know our end customer, become a friend to our end customer, and introduce them to our team, introduce them to the brand more, introduce them to what's happening behind the scenes, and really take them along on our journey. So we've been very heavily focusing on our social media. We've been putting informative videos out there. We started a YouTube channel. We've been doing weekly webinars. I don't know if you saw where we've invited incredible speakers to join us on the weekly webinars. And it's not only about Saxenburg at all. We've been talking about corks and where corks come from, what do they mean, or the same with barrels, or what do glasses make for a difference. So we've tried to give the customer, an educational experience and take them along on our journey, but also giving them an opportunity to create a dialogue with us. And I think we've never been as interactive with our customers, and it's extremely rewarding, and it's so nice to hear from them. And we've been really working on, our slogan is Saxenburg Wines, creating moments. And what we mean by that is we want, life is all about the moments that are happening, and we really want to be part of those moments. Are they small or big moments? Are they celebratory moments or lonely moments? Doesn't matter, but most of those moments are around a glass of wine or around a nice meal with a glass of wine, and we want to be part of that journey, and that's what we've been focusing on. And so we've also taken that time to actually make a new website. So look out for that, because it will be launching very soon, and we've created a whole new website where all of this, we've just been talking about, will be integrated, and it will just make a much nicer organic experience for our customer.
I mean, I suppose the only things I can add to that, obviously, is, earlier I alluded to the fact that in the wine industry, everything is about long-term planning. I think obviously with, as Fiona said, with a crisis comes opportunity. It's been devastating in so many ways, but it also comes, brings with it certain silver linings that you can then either act on or not. And for us, that was very much building out our sort of direct to consumer offering, is creating content, not just creating content, but also giving, becoming more personal in the way that we interact, giving a sort of peek behind the scenes, presenting the team, and then also just opening up to customers and saying, ask us all the questions that you've been wanting to ask them that never maybe had the platform to ask, and we'll share them with you and any other listener that is willing to listen. And I think you just, in terms of your planning, what changes is that because there's so much uncertainty, we sort of at the moment we work with what we call our sort of 3 months vision strategies, and that's basically how do we operate within these 3 months, and what sort of view do we take. But the focus is very much direct to consumer. It's technology is going to play a tremendous role. We are now looking at a concept that is also introducing a virtual tasting room. Not so much obviously on the one hand, because people will be for some time more reluctant to set foot into certain establishments, but also because we are speaking to a wider audience now, that may be far away, that cannot get in the car and just drive 20, 30, 40 minutes and be at the farm, and to also bring them in and make them part of the experience. So it certainly changed in that sort of way. Also, I think a spirit of collaboration has come from this. We are working currently, we're very proud of our sort of area, obviously Stellenbosch, but to be more precise, the Polka Dry Hills. We've been working during lockdown on an initiative as well, which I can't divulge just yet, but which will be coming out in the next month or two, with a few of the farms that are in the area. And we think that, you know, this is a time to be collaborative. This is a time to pool resources and kind of find a common denominator and spread the same message, trying to reach a wider audience and with our products and our wines. So that's definitely another thing that we've been working on. I think a way in which the business model has changed, but very much in a favorable way.
Well, that's, you know, it's great that you've guys been proactive, and it seems that you're going to continue on this road going forward. I think people underestimate the amount of engagement you can create. And you're right. I think you mentioned, Fiona, that or it was actually you, Vincent, that said your customers have the first time that you really can communicate with them on a almost a bigger scale. So that's amazing that you guys have embraced this, and I think this is really the way of the future. What is the most important thing that you've learned from your wine journey?
Well, I mean, one of the most wonderful things, and I think it's probably 99% of the reason why, you know, anyone that's involved in wine or is producing wine or selling wine is involved is because of the product itself. You know, the sort of journey from vine to bottle. The people you meet in the industry are exceptional, whether locally or abroad. Always with this sort of zest of life and adventure and very close to nature and outdoors, and that is the way that we're sort of shaped as well. So I think that's a tremendous appeal. But the biggest lesson is definitely to have patience in my mind. Everything takes a long time. We plant new vines, we play with new plant material, new clones, new sites. You know, you plant them today and you won't see the fruit of that labor for many, many years to come. Even bar the commercial aspect of it, you know, these things take a lot of patience, and then very often it's the temptation of not sidetracking. It's the temptation of not, you know, taking up other projects or following trends. So I think patience and discipline are definitely a big sort of part of the learning process in this journey.
For us, it's also, you know, not, as we're saying, what already my parents started, is not following trends, believing in what we're doing, setting our own trends. And then also, you know, there's so much amazing wine out there, especially in South Africa. There's just amazing winemakers. And so just get inspired by those people and surround yourself with people that inspire you. You know, the thing is with the wine industry, it's a constant learning. And that's what we thoroughly enjoy about it. And that's, you know, you're constantly adding on. And I definitely believe that's something I've taken from that.
Oh, excellent. I'd love to hear from you guys and get your favorite wine quotes from each of you.
One should wake up with a smile in the morning and end the day with a glass of wine. And I like it because for me, ending the day with a glass of wine or two is like ending the day with a smile. So you started with a smile and you ended with one.
I love it.
I mean, there's so many great and so many cheesy quotes, I think, in wine, but one that really resonated with me is the one that says wine is bottled poetry. And the reason it was, especially more recently, is I've been tasting endless amounts of wine during lockdown as well with our cellar master Doug van Sale, as we were sort of putting together new blends and, you know, obviously tasting our way through the 2020 vintage and, you know, getting ready for the 2019. And it's very interesting. The more people you bring together, it's always great to surround yourself with experienced and good palates. And, you know, it's interesting that everyone always interprets a wine in a different way. And I guess, you know, a little bit like poetry. It reminded me of English literature. You know, you asked to interpret one of Shakespeare's poems, and it's like, okay, everyone has a kind of draws a different inspirational meaning from it. And the same way in wine, I think that's the beauty of it, is you know, it's you interpret it in your own way and you associate through it a memory or a time, or you mark an event. And so I love that. I think it's so true for wine. And I think the more time you spend tasting wine, the more that becomes the truth.
Excellent. Guys, that was awesome. If our listeners want to get hold of you, how do they actually, you know, where do they find you?
So we've, as Fiona said, we've been very active on our sort of channels. Our Instagram, you know, you're obviously always happy, and please, you know, have a look at what we're doing there. So the handle is Saxenburg Wines. And then we're on Facebook as well, Saxenburg Wine Estate. You can find us on YouTube, Saxenburg Wine Estate. We've got our own dedicated channel there to which we upload all of the content, all the videos, webinars, interviews that we've been conducting over the last months now. And then otherwise, obviously, if you want to reach us in a more sort of direct way, you can just email us at info@saxenburg.co.za, and we'd be obviously delighted to hear from anyone.
Guys, it was really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time speaking to us, and I think our listeners will really love this. And yes, thank you very much for an informative talk.
Thank you so much, Will. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, it was a great pleasure, and I hope we could share some good information with everyone.
Thank you for supporting our show. If you would like to get more exposure for your business, please have a look at our sponsorship options. Thanks again for supporting About the Winelands. Please follow us on YouTube and on our social media channels. All details and links are in the description.